Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're talking about somewhat of a controversial topic. Right, we're talking about something that I wasn't expecting to come across today, but I did, right? And so it's about Balisong clones, right? And kind of the morality of Balisong clones. Now, this is something that I feel like is a big kind of hot topic. I think definitely in recent times, clones have become a bit more acceptable. I think people, especially in the States, because that's usually where, one, the majority of the Balisong hobby is, due to its, ease of access there, and two, the majority of makers are from the States, where obviously Balisongs are super accessible. And I feel like that's where a lot of the backlash from clones has come in. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that the intellectual property theft that clone makers do employ, I don't necessarily agree with it on a moral standpoint. I think there should be some sort of kind of hark back to it. But I think for the companies that do try and make their own distinct versions, rather than a one-to-one copy, I think that's perfectly fine because, like, for example, with the Chab clone, like the one Chab clone, it's on Zempins, the dimensions are slightly different. And so I think that is perfectly fine, right? Because that's like how, like in the guitar world, for example, you can buy a Strat that isn't made by Fender, right? It's, for all intents and purposes, the same feeling guitar. It'll probably, maybe it won't be as nice to play depending on the price point, but the shape is the same, right? And so that's the kind of important part, right? It's got that Strat look, but it's actually fundamentally something different. And it complies with the copyright laws in order to use this kind of design. Since Balisong designs aren't like patented for the most part, I'm pretty sure it's perfectly fine to be using stuff like that. However, there do come the one-to-one clones, which I have mixed feelings on. I think that, things like this is the Bali Plus V4 Tsunami clone. It has the, the Squid Industries logo. I don't necessarily agree with the Squid Industries logo being there. For me personally, it doesn't bother me a ton, like, aesthetically, but I think from a moral standpoint, it's kind of scummy that you could try from certain angles to pass this off as a genuine Tsunami. I mean, it's got the right dimensions, it takes the right hardware, it's got the jewelling inside. The only thing it doesn't have, which I do like, is that the back is blank. Now, I do like the fact that it's blank. I don't like how it looks being blank. I wish there was something here, but I'm glad that it doesn't have, like a serial S35VN, lying there, and like a blank blade, with production 3 or whatever, production 9, anything like this. When it comes to looking like a Tsunami, don't get me wrong, I would enjoy a Balisong that looked exactly like a Tsunami at a tenth of the price, especially if the performance was similar, simply because Tsunamis are essentially unobtainable here, especially in the UK, unless you want to pay second-hand prices, which are oftentimes scalped. But from a moral standpoint, exclusively, I don't agree with making a one-to-one Tsunami. Now, you may be wondering, what does this have to do? I mean, unless you've already seen the post, right? It's got, over 90 comments now, which is quite a lot for a Balisong post. There is a new Tsunami clone made by some sort of company called Blue River. I'm not sure who they are, some factory in China, probably. And they have come out with a Tsunami clone that, does exactly that. It is essentially a one-to-one blatant ripoff of the Squid Industries Tsunami. More so than this, if you can believe it. It has the milled blades, right? That's a fairly recent thing, actually. The the milling lines on the blades. Let's see if I can get a good angle. And you can see them there. The milling lines on the blades. That's a fairly recent innovation, especially in the clone market. It has the Squid Industries logo on the front, and it says production 9 on the back and is serialized. Okay, so that's kind of sketchy already, right? This is already something that is becoming indistinguishable from the real deal. Now, that's the one thing I would like. I would like for clones to have some sort of distinguishment, something to be able to tell them apart from the real deal. For example, I believe the Kraken clones don't have the correct writing on the back, and, the tolerances aren't up to spec, but something like these Tsunamis are made really well. I mean, the VG10 steel, it's no S35VN, but it's pretty good stuff for the price. And from that point, the only thing that tells this apart from a real deal, I mean, if you swap real hardware and whatnot into it, it is just, I guess, the gentle fit and finish, the inconsistencies there, the tune, but obviously mine is tuned and swapped to stainless washers, and then this back bit here on the blade, right? So unless you have them side by side, it's very difficult to tell, especially if it doesn't come with the original box. Now, this would be... I'm not going to say okay, because I still think it's kind of scummy to do that, but I think it would be acceptable and wouldn't receive as much backlash if it weren't for the way it's packaged. It comes in essentially exactly the same box as the real Squid Tsunami. It has the white box, and it says Squid Industries. Okay, it's not the first time we've seen clones do that. It comes with a Squid Industries sheath, right? Like the the cloth sheath or whatever. I doubt it'll be very good quality, but it comes with that as well. Okay, also not the first time we've seen that. It is frowned upon, but I think it would be let slip under the rug. Maybe the white box not so much, but if it came in a black box with a cheap sheath, it'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. It's not the first time a clone has done that. And it comes with a nice foam cutout like the real Tsunami does. Essentially all the little bits and bobs. And the main thing that is definitely a step too far is the fake certificate of authenticity card that comes with this Tsunami. So they are serialized. Now, I'm not sure if the serial matches the certificate of authenticity. If it does, I mean, one, props that they're even doing that, just from a technical standpoint. But that's also really, really bad for what has, for the most part, been eradicated from the second-hand Balisong market. Now, this certificate of authenticity, you can go check it out on the One Balisong Instagram, and I believe that colasong.com and onebalisong.com. You can see this. It's the blue. I'm not sure if it's aluminium, like the real ones are, or the real ones might be steel. I'm not sure what they are. I'm not sure if it's this blue steel card or aluminium card. I do know it looks like it is. It could be paper, right? But it could also be the proper, steel card. And it's got the people's names on it at Squid, right? Which is genuinely terrible. And that is something I am not for, and I don't think should be supported. I don't think it should be encouraged, this kind of counterfeiting, because this is essentially a counterfeit product now. Don't get me wrong, having the name and the serial and that on the back was already enough so that you could consider it a counterfeit, considering it claims to be one-to-one. But coming with a faux certificate of authenticity, which obviously there will be people with the real ones of these, that's going to make it quite difficult. There already was some complaint with the JK Orca, which I do actually have one. The JK Orca V2 clone, this guy here, which would have been like, okay, so now the single slot Orcas, I mean, this is a one-to-one clone essentially, which, this thing is pretty difficult to tell apart from the real deal, other than the hardware, the washers, and it doesn't have a serial, right? But it still has the logo and stuff, which is the biggest frowned upon thing, right? The fact that this looks and feels pretty much like a genuine Orca, which, yeah, again, I don't necessarily agree with, right? I would have no problem if this didn't say JK. I like the Orca text, but I don't need it to say JK or even Orca at all, right? Even if it was just like this on both sides, it would still look great. A bit bland, right? Which is the biggest problem I have here. They have these slots for text, but they don't have any, which is just aesthetically, I find unbalanced, especially as there is text on one side and none on the other. I'd rather none on both sides or some on both sides, whether it be completely irrelevant or whatever. Like if it said, Squid Industries here and Bali Plus here, or, just something there, Tsunami even if it said, it would be, I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, the certificate of authenticity card is definitely a step too far. I think the rest of it would be frowned upon for sure, but accepted considering, but actually, I don't think it would, because it's still, you can pass it off as a real deal, right? Depending on the placement of all the different engravings and things like this, like, it would be very difficult to pass off, one of these guys. Let's say this is the new Blue River one from, let's say this is a real Squid one from a real one, right? Unless you have a one-to-one side-by-side comparison, it would be pretty difficult to pass it off, obviously, unless the printing is that different, which it doesn't appear to be so far. Now, one, I guess, upside for authenticity is this seems to only be a problem with the polished version with the milled pattern on the blade. The DLC version does not appear to have blade milling, and there is also a polished version with just the standard flat blade, right? Which I don't believe there are any Tsunamis with a flat ground blade. Which, if you are to buy one of these, I highly suggest you get one of those, either DLC or the flat ground ones, and I wouldn't suggest, trying to sell on as authentic one of the real deals, right? Don't scam people. Don't be, a knob. That's not really what we want to encourage here. because it used to be a pretty big problem back in the day when you'd have a lot more unreliable sellers. And don't get me wrong, it's still a problem that plagues the community, right? Like I've been not almost scammed, but I've had scammers approach me to sell me Balisongs with fraudulent listings and things like this. And, obviously they're not going to do it on the cheap Balisongs because there's no point. It's on those more expensive ones, right? Like the Benchmade 42s. Those are really difficult still at the moment. It plagues specific Balisongs where there are quite good copies. I think the new Bali Plus Benchmade 42 is quite similar to the original deal, right? Which isn't great, because if someone has a real box or a fake enough box, a good enough fake, it's not good, right? And I would hate to see someone, part ways with $700 to $1,200 because of this Blue River Balisong. So I think if you are going to get one, more power to you. Obviously, I understand the fact that this has been discontinued and it's the only live blade titanium Tsunami left on the market, right? There is no more options for it unless you're buying secondhand. And so from that point, I understand if you want the experience of a Tsunami at the price point it is, it's a very affordable price point. You can make some crazy overheads if you were to con people out of it. Again, do not do that. That is like the worst thing you could possibly do in the community. Not only supporting this kind of thing, but then also trying to pass it on as authentic. It's not something that should be encouraged. But essentially, there is a new one. Let me know though, guys. Would you want to see it on the channel compared to like the Bali Plus, for example? I'm willing, if I manage to sell one of these, this is for sale by the way, guys. Yeah, this is essentially mint condition, good tolerances. There you go. No tap, barely any play. All of that good stuff. That's for sale. Hit me up on Reddit or Instagram for that. This guy here, I really like. I wish these were still in production. I don't know why they stopped it. There is an aluminium Tsunami, which you can still get trainer Tsunamis as well from Bali Plus. And I'd recommend, get the trainer and the aluminium one. And there you go. You've got a blade for your thing, and you even have an aluminium trainer version. Okay, sure. But what if someone, doesn't want to spend all the money on two knives and you just get the one? So I understand why it's there, which is why I say buy the flat ground so that it doesn't get passed off as a fake rather than the one with the milling. However, let's be real, people are going to get the ones with the milling. So I'm genuinely curious to see how accurate is it to a real deal. Is it any better than the Bali Plus version? I'm genuinely curious, like for someone who will never be able to experience a Tsunami, because it's entirely possible. There are some in Europe. I could trade my Seraph for one, or I could end up buying one, but they are still insanely expensive. And for someone who's lost their car, and I'm currently in a bit of a situation financially where it doesn't make sense to be spending, close to 4 figures, because especially for us here in Europe, we don't have access to Blade Show, right? We can get a proxy, but that's, difficult enough as it is. That's finding someone in another country who you most likely will have never met and trust them to go and spend your money at a physical event and then post you something with questionable legality potentially into your country. It takes a lot of trust to find someone who is able to do that, especially if you don't want to be paying extra on top of that. But that would still be $700 for a Tsunami, $40 for shipping, also, $20 to $40 for shipping. So you're already spending, and then plus potential customs tax if they do things incorrectly. So, it's around $800, to get a Tsunami into the UK, especially if it's not just the bog standard one. So it kind of makes sense that for, a sixth of the price, you can get one that is almost exactly the same. And I'll be honest with you, it's piqued my curiosity. Do I think it's a good thing morally? No. Do I think that they should probably take it down? It would probably be the most ethical option. Do I think it'll happen? No, because China doesn't care. But yeah, I definitely think don't try to encourage the purchase of this, which is why, I spoke to BBKS. BBKS has decided that he's not going to list it on his store. I know Kotlin and One Balisong have them. But make that what you will. I'll still be using all 3 services in order to, just in terms of price, in order to acquire Balisongs. I won't think of them any different, like the sellers at least, but definitely it's not something that the makers should be encouraged to do. Same thing with like the Fellowship Gaboon that got cloned. It makes my real one a little less valuable in the real market if they have something with serials and the blade steel and whatnot, and it's all, you know, fake, right? So I definitely don't agree with doing this, and this to make it look exactly the same. That certificate of authenticity, that's too far. That's where I draw the line. Whereas, you know, if I were to ever acquire one, right, for the channel and sell it on, because I've had interest in people wanting to see this thing, I would 100% make it as clear as possible that it's not the real deal, right? After that, it's out of my hands, you know, having a few of them in circulation. I know Brandon Baker is determined to make sure, you know, they sell as little of them as possible. And so that's something that could actually be quite a good thing, you know, for the wider community in general. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't pique my interest, you know. It's the same way when the Volp clone came out. I'm pretty sure Will Hirsch bought one just to see, because, you know, he wanted to see kind of what is this about, even though he had the patented design. So very curious about this new Tsunami clone. It's pretty controversial, and I think rightfully so. I think where clones have already sat, this is probably as much as it would be. I wouldn't mind it saying production here, you know, production 9, 10, 11, 3, 1, 2, but no serials, you know, don't stamp S35VN on the side. I don't even think you should really have the squid logo. I think if Armed Shark were ever to make a false edge, they should just write, you know, Armed Shark on the one side and production 1. And you can even have the productions and serials there. As long as it says Armed Shark there, that's the big thing, right? And I think Armed Shark in block caps would work. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Sorry, it's a bit of a longer ramble video. And my Balisong, the screws are coming loose. The titanium is stripped, my bite handle one. And so it's like, it just comes loose and it's really difficult to tighten. So Balisong doesn't sound good anymore. So I'll need to buy new screws or just swap these out. It's very tragic. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this Blue River Balisong that's available now for purchase. Would you want to see one on the channel to compare it to the Bali Plus one? You know, rather than trying to get the information from sellers? Or would you rather it just doesn't see the light of day? Let me know, and I'll be reading all the comments in the description below. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. You know, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Consider joining the channel as well. I'd much appreciate it. Yeah, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.